Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thinking Offensively. I'm Billy, and today I am very excited because after a couple of months of work, I finally get to release a tool that I've been working on called the Red Team Campaign Planner. Now, this tool was created to solve a very specific problem in red teaming, and that is developing adversary emulation plans that you can use during engagements. So if you've ever been involved in a red team, you know there are really kind of two threat perspectives that the red team operators can take to execute the engagement. The first one is called a red team simulation, and during these exercises, the red team operators will use a full array of TTPs, not restricted to any one specific group, to try to gain access and achieve the objectives that you established before the engagement began. The other type is called an adversary emulation engagement, and during this type of red team, the operators are purposefully trying to emulate a very specific threat actor and use the TTPs that threat actor is known to perform in the wild. And honestly, I love both of these types of red teams. I think they both have a place in the offensive security maturity model. But when performing adversary emulations, I found that, if as a consultant, because I didn't really have access to cyber threat intelligence to support me and develop a campaign plan, that I was spending a lot of time trying to put together an adversary emulation plan. And I would normally start out by, doing some queries either through a search engine or on Gen AI to try to find out, what kind of actors are targeting the industry that I'm interested in. And then from there, I'd pull some vendor reports from Mandiant, FireEye, all those types of vendor reports that are out there. And I would just do some research and try to better understand that specific threat actor. And then finally, I would go to MITRE ATT&CK and I would look at the description, look at some of the techniques, and then I would dive deep into the navigator layer, and I would try to align techniques for each phase of the engagement pulled directly from navigator. But what I found is this would take me normally between 2 and 8 hours. And when you're on an engagement, you're executing a red team, and if you're a consultant, you have a bucket of hours. So maybe I have 120 hours to do everything, right? Plan, execute, and write a report. I don't want to be spending 8 hours researching the threat that I'm going to emulate. I would much rather have that emulation plan available to me at the start of the engagement and spend as much time possible on keyboard trying to achieve the objectives that we agreed upon. So this is the problem that I was trying to solve when I put together the Red Team Campaign Planner, and I'm excited that I get to announce this and show this to you today. So the Red Team Campaign Planner is live on the internet right now at redteamcampaignplanner.com. And when you first land on the page, you're going to see a couple things that I just want to highlight really quickly. First, you're going to have a navigation menu on the left. The home page is the instructions, and then the other two buttons here represent the two modes available in the Red Team Campaign Planner. We're going to talk about those in a moment, but real quick, I also want to point out there's a widget here in the sidebar as well, which tells you the MITRE data status. And what this means, I made a design choice here because I didn't want the Red Team Campaign Planner making API calls to MITRE every single time I wanted to pull data. So instead, I'm pulling down the entirety of the MITRE database once per week, storing it locally, and executing the analysis on that data set. So you can see how old it is today. I mean, today's the 17th, and this last pull was on the 14th of December. And in this database, there are 24,771 objects. You'll see this change as it updates. And again, I have this set to automatically update once per week right now. So jumping into the main window, you have the instructions that I mentioned previously. And I wanted to make this as simple and straightforward as possible, right? We don't need another tool in the red team world that has a bunch of flags and is super complicated to use, right? We need access to the information that we need so that we can execute the job that we're trying to execute quickly and at a high quality. So the two ways to use it. The first one is industry analysis. And you would use this mode when you want to identify the top threats to a selected industry and geography, and then you want to review the relevant threat group techniques for that group. So, for example, a CISO comes to you and says, hey, I'm working in this financial services company, maybe it's a bank, and they say, I want to do a red team and I want to do an emulation, but I don't really know what actor. So please, you pick an actor and then you emulate them, and let's execute this campaign. So what I would do in that case is I would follow these instructions under industry analysis. So I'm going to select industry analysis in the sidebar. Then I'm going to select my target industry and geography. So Over here on the left, you can see industry analysis settings in the sidebar. The top drop down is for industry. There are about 20 different industries here. There's nothing fancy. I didn't make these up. These are pulled directly from MITRE. So these are aligned with what MITRE is already tracking for specific threat actors. So everything from, transportation, aerospace, entertainment, all of them, about 20 of them total. So we're going to go ahead and select aerospace. And then under target geography, if you expand that, you can see that there is a global, Americas, Europe, Asia Pacific, or Middle East and Africa option. For today, I'm going to select Americas. And then the last thing right below here, there's a slider that basically goes from 1 to 20. This is the number of groups that will be represented once I hit run analysis. And just as a note, when I do hit run analysis, what is happening is the program is performing some keyword analysis. So in the code, there's a bunch of keywords that I put together to try to score actors and kind of, get them aligned to the right industry and geography so that we can prioritize them. But that's what's happening in the background. It's doing keyword analysis on the MITRE data. I know keyword analysis isn't the best and most accurate way, but I wanted to get a working product out there. I wanted to get a version 1. With hopes that I can tie in some real cyber threat intel data in the future and really make this scoring strong and something that you can really trust in. But using the scoring that we have now, so I went ahead and clicked run analysis, you see a couple things right off the bat. The first one is you see a bar chart that represents the top 3, which was the number in the slider that we selected, groups that are representative of the factors that we selected. So aerospace and the industry and the geography, excuse me. Below that, you see that there's another section that is the detailed threat group analysis, and they all start collapse, but you can expand these. So we're going to expand Leviathan, and we're going to look at a couple other things. First, you're going to see a relevance score. Really, that is just the scoring from the keywords that I talked about before. And if you want to know how it scored it, you can open up this scoring breakdown and see what matches it made. Some are going to be more accurate than others. Some are only going to have a couple things in here. Again, it's keyword analysis, but it's a starting point, and it's still better than nothing. Above that, we have the description for the group, which, again, I'm not writing these things. I do love red teaming, but I'm not writing about threat actors per se. So I'm just pulling that directly from the MITRE ATT&CK page for that specific group. So Leviathan, and then here's the description that comes from MITRE ATT&CK. And then below that is the part that is, the most useful for you as you prepare adversary emulation campaigns, but that's the known techniques. So for Leviathan, by phase, there's 14 total tactics here, which is how MITRE organizes the data. And I can actually show you real quick in Navigator how this works. So when I go to the group page for MITRE ATT&CK, I can scroll down here and I can see techniques, but they're not really in any kind of order. They're just kind of here, right? So what I like to do is I like to open up this attack navigator layer and I hit view. I've already got it open, so I'm just going to switch back to it. But that will give you this representation. And this is what I used to use as a primary source for planning for emulation campaigns. But it's a little bit unwieldy. It's large, it scrolls, there's all kinds of stuff. And I can only really see the descriptions if I hover over the applicable items. So across the top, as I mentioned, there are 14 tactics, and then there are techniques underneath each of those tactics. And when you're looking at this navigator, the ones that are colored, so blue or pink here, are the ones that that group is known to have used. So we can look here, we see vuln scanning, we see compromised credentials under reconnaissance, or we can go to initial access, we see spear phishing with attachment, we see spear phishing link, right? All of these things that we can start to pull down for our adversary emulation plan. But again, I thought this was so time intensive that I wanted to make it even easier. So now when you pull down the known techniques in the Red Team Campaign Planner, again, you have all the tactics, you expand those tactics. Let's look at reconnaissance. We saw on the navigator layer, we saw vuln scanning and compromised credentials were in use. And what do you know? Both of those are here as well. So that will hold true for every one of the tactics, which cover all of the phases of an engagement. So now what you can do, run a query in Red Team Campaign Planner, and then go straight to the known techniques and start to build out that emulation plan with all of those things that you want to emulate. One other note that I'll add is for every single known technique that is in here, I've included the MITRE ID, as well as the usage details and the technique name. Why this is important is when you're planning, you're going to want to use things like in the usage details, right? You're going to say, hey, Leviathan's utilize techniques like reflective DLL loading to write DLL into memory and load a shell. Okay, maybe I can emulate that. So maybe I'll take note of that. WMI for persistence. I know I can emulate that. So let me make sure that I do that, right? But I'm also going to take note of that ID, because when I get to the end of my engagement and I'm writing my report, I'm going to have to tell this story, and I'm going to want to tie the attacks that I took back to the threat actor that was selected and back to MITRE, so that the blue team can, really understand what it is that we did and understand how it is they can mitigate it if we were successful. So that is in there for reporting. And that is pretty much it for the industry analysis mode. The other mode that we have is called the threat group browser. Let me go back to the instructions real quick. So the threat group browser, here's that italicized sentence for that one. You already know which group you want to emulate, and you're ready to see that group's technique. So in the previous example, the CISO came to you and said, hey, you pick the group that's most relevant to us, and then you emulate them. In this case, you're having an engagement. The CISO comes to you and he says, hey, I'm hearing from my threat intel team that APT41 is really a big risk for me. So we've done some detection engineering, and now I want to validate that. So I want you, red teamer, to execute a red team adversary emulation, and I want you to emulate APT41. So in that case, we would use this threat group browser. And what we would do is we're going to select threat group browser in the sidebar, as it says there, and then select a threat group from the drop-down menu. So here's the drop-down menu. All the threat groups that are in MITRE are included here. You could select the one you want. In our case, it was APT41, and it'll auto-populate here in the bottom. And again, we have the description that's pulled directly from the MITRE page. And then we have the known techniques that are pulled directly from APT41's navigator layer. So you look in initial access, APT41 has gained access to prod environments. APT41 has used compromised credentials. APT41 has sent spear phishing emails with attachments such as compiled HTML. So something that you can emulate, right? You can start to pull those things out and build your plan. And again, you just want to work through every phase, understand what it is you're going to do reconnaissance, gain initial access, do your privilege escalation, do your lateral movement, and then do your actions on objective, right? And get that stuff back. So you'll have to go through here. Some of these overlap, some of them repeat, but MITRE has done an incredible job of making this information available. And hopefully the Red Team Campaign Planner has made it even easier to create these emulation plans when it comes time to do so. So that is pretty much it for the Red Team Campaign Planner. So wrapping up here, I really want, what my goal is from this is that I've created a tool that is useful to more people than just myself. So please go out to redteamcampaignplanner.com. Please try the tool out, experiment with it. If you find things that don't work or could be better other than the keyword analysis, I'm tracking that one. Anything else, just go ahead and drop a note, like drop a comment here, hit me up on other socials. I don't care. Just get in contact with me somehow and tell me how I can make this thing better, because I want it to be useful. So go out there, test it. Please try it out, share your feedback. And then last thing, while you're here, a little bit of a shameless plug, but please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of stuff planned for early 2026 in the offensive security content space. Really trying to fill a niche that I don't think is really covered now. So please like and subscribe, and stay tuned in the coming months. Thanks for watching.